Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin and the fact that when you account for the money supply, we are in fact right now testing the 2017 all-time high. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the sale on the premium list. You can lock in the lower rate on the premium list now. Check that out in the description below if you want to know how I'm navigating these markets. You'll get access to weekly reports and videos, a Telegram alerts channel, a Telegram chat room, a risk dashboard, and more. So go check that out. So, a couple weeks ago, I put out a video, and it received a decent number of, a decent amount of interest, I should say, is that when you account for the money supply, or M2, we've already tested the prior all-time high from 2017. Now, if you're not familiar with this, essentially, we can look at the money supply in the past and note that it was increasing at a pretty steady rate, a pretty predictable rate. However, since March of 2020, when the pandemic started, we can also see that things have completely taken off. And, from where we probably should have been at this time, the money supply now is approximately 20% higher than it probably otherwise would have been, okay? So if the money supply is 20% higher than it otherwise should have been, it calls into question, well, are we already testing the prior all-time high when accounting for the money supply today and what it was back in 2017? And the best way that I can think to do that is to just take the valuation of Bitcoin in US dollars and divide by the money supply M2. Now, obviously, this is a pretty rudimentary way of doing it, and there's probably better ways, but this is one of the easiest ways to account for the money supply. And when you account for it, and you just simply draw a line across, you can see that, in fact, the prior all-time high in 2017 was at this point. We actually came down to this point back in June 22nd or so, and then we're testing it again today, about a month later. So what I find interesting is, yes, there's a lot of discussion as to whether Bitcoin will ever go to 20K again. Obviously, there's a case for the bulls and a case for the bears to be made. But when you account for the money supply, we're already testing it, right? We're already testing it. Now, I'm not trying to diminish the fact that there's still a chance we actually go to $20,000. There's always, of course, a chance we go to those levels. But I just want to draw people's attention to the fact that when you account for the circulating money out there, in fact, we are in fact testing the prior all-time high. I just think it's interesting because when you go back and look at prior moves and we draw a line in the sand across it, you can see that that's never actually happened before. Okay, so like here's an example where we account for the money supply. Once we came up to this level and past it, we actually never looked back. This time we are looking back. And if you don't account for the money supply and go back to a prior cycle, it tells a slightly different story. For instance, if you go back here and then look at this cycle, and then let's switch this over to the daily time frame. So if you go look at this cycle, we actually went above the prior all-time high and then came back down below it. But when you account for the money supply, we didn't actually cross it on that first attempt, and it was the next attempt that we went past it. So it's interesting because now we're actually testing the prior all-time high when before that had actually not happened, okay? The other thing to look at as well is if we change this to so that we can actually go back just a little bit further in time, we can also look at the prior 2011 move. And here you can also see that once we passed it, we actually never went back down below it. So looking at all three of them, you can see a pretty similar trend. So this is actually the first time ever in Bitcoin's history that it's going back and testing the prior all-time high when accounting for the money supply. Now, we're going to have to give it a while before we know if we go back to 20K or not. I can say that this is at least unprecedented. Okay, it's at least unprecedented in the sense that we've never actually gone back to these levels after a fairly major move. We always were able to go substantially higher. This is, I would say this is even more evidence to suggest that over the entire macro scale of this, what I would consider to be lengthened cycle, that we have a long way to go. and that could involve more downside volatility and upside volatility. But I don't imagine that the entire cycle is going to come back down lower than the 2017 all-time high and then stay there for 2 years. Okay. Now, could we see it come below it and then maybe gather itself and then come back up and then continue along its journey? And then we just look at this as one, just one crazy market cycle that we sort of, we go up and we come back down, we go up and we come back down, and we just keep sort of rinsing and repeating that pattern. My guess is that we have a long way to go. Okay, my guess is that we have a long way to go. Obviously, there's a lot of people that would think that we're going to be going down and then we're going to stay down for a number of years. Okay, my thinking is that we could go down, but I don't think we're going to spend very long at the lower levels, even though I would admit we could go below the current prices. I don't think we're going to spend a substantial amount of time there. Could be a few months, but I don't foresee us spending years, trading below 20K. We could go below 20K again. I don't see years trading below it. And then especially accounting for the money supply, considering that we're already testing the prior all-time high, we will want to keep an eye on that to see if in fact we do go below it. If we go back to say the level that we were at in 2019, which is a little bit further down from where we currently are, it would in fact involve another 34% drop, which would be fairly substantial. From the current valuation of Bitcoin, a 33 or 34% drop would take us, back down to 20K, right? That would take us back down to 20K. So if the valuation of Bitcoin were to drop about 33, 34%, then we would go back to the local top from 2019 when accounting for the money supply. So hopefully we can continue to navigate the market effectively. As I've mentioned before, don't expect a super quick recovery right now. Expect a continued lull in the market. And I do think we'll come out the other side, but we just need a little bit more time to get there. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out the sale on the premium list again, and you can lock in the lower rate. We'll have that running for about 2 weeks. And subscribe, click the bell icon to turn on notifications, and I'll see you next time. Bye.